I loved playing. I put the time in to develop my skill. That's the first thing, is just develop the love for the game. And if you have the talent, everything else kind of flows from there. First base is a little bit like being a point guard, a little bit like being a center. Don't mess up. Don't make turnovers. No false starts, no bad snaps. And I felt like I could be somebody at first base that my teammates could count on. Before I even started my professional career, I figured out how to deal with injury. It's not if, it's when. God gave me a gift to hit a baseball, and I'm thankful for that. If you don't have that pre-wiring, you won't be able to do it.
Mark Teixeira played Major League Baseball for 14 seasons, transitioning from college ball his junior year, where he played at Georgia Tech, and won the Dick Howser Trophy as the National Collegiate Baseball Player of the Year.
After spending only 1 year in the minor leagues, Mark was promoted to the majors by the Texas Rangers in 2003. While in the MLB, he also played for the Atlanta Braves, Los Angeles Angels, and New York Yankees.
His list of accomplishments is pretty amazing. He was one of the most prolific switch hitters in Major League Baseball history and still holds the record for most games with a home run from both sides of the plate.
And Mark was a 3-time All-Star, won 5 Gold Glove awards as a first baseman, and of course, won a World Series with the Yankees.
And how about this? After he retired after the 2016 season, Mark finished his college degree and has been involved in real estate and other businesses.
Before our first pitch with Mark, many thanks to our sponsor for this season, Culligan.
Culligan's drinking water systems deliver the superior filtration and refreshing hydration you need to fuel your high-performance lifestyle. Culligan, water you love.
We caught up with Mark at his home in Texas. Welcome to the Adrenaline Zone, and we are delighted to have you as our guest and are really looking forward to this Georgia Tech-laden conversation.
Super excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Hey, Mark, really good to see you again. Last time I saw you was actually in Texas, where you are now. So we like to start with our guests, kind of like, where did it all begin? Where did you start your baseball career as a kid? And sort of how did it shape your trajectory to Georgia Tech?
So I grew up playing wiffle ball in the backyard in Severna Park, Maryland. And I tell people, if you want to learn how to hit a baseball, go outside with a little skinny yellow bat when you're 3 or 4 years old, and have your dad or your friends throw you wiffle balls in the wind. The ball's moving all over the place, and that's how I learned how to hit. And so, growing up in Severna Park, Maryland, it was backyard baseball was where it all started.
And you fell in love with it from the start, huh?
I did. My dad played baseball at the Naval Academy. My mom grew up in a baseball family. Her father played semi-pro baseball. A couple of her brothers played college baseball, and so it was just a family game for us. And I remember some of my very first memories going to Old Memorial Stadium in Baltimore and, watching Eddie Murray and Cal Ripken and some of those great Oriole teams.
So I didn't realize that your dad was a Naval Academy baseball player. So we have something in common then, because both our parents went to the Naval Academy and we both went to Georgia Tech. So I think we got the better end of the deal, but not by much.
We probably had more fun, Sandy. I'll tell you that much.
No doubt. No doubt.
So you were drafted in the 9th round straight out of Georgia Tech. And so that's sort of a big step. Did you have any doubts about jumping, I think out of junior year into the big leagues, and how that was related to where you fell in the draft, and what were the risks involved? Did you have a backup plan? I mean, that's a big leap from junior year right into the...
So I was drafted in the 9th round out of high school at Mount St. Joseph High School in Baltimore, Maryland. And, that's kind of a funny story. So I was projected to be a top 10 pick in that draft. And I had some teams call me early on. I had the Boston Red Sox called me. They had either the 9th or 12th pick. I can't remember exactly what pick it was, but they had called me and said, "Hey, we want to take you in the first round. I know you're going to Georgia Tech. If you think you're going to sign, you got to let us know. We want you to agree to this contract." And first of all, that was illegal back then. Now you have slotted signing bonuses. And I said, well, first of all, that's illegal, and just draft me, and we'll negotiate. But I'm sure we'll come to an agreement. Well, they didn't like that answer, and they went out and told every other team that I was going to go to Georgia Tech and I wasn't going to sign. And so I dropped all the way from, the 9th or 10th pick down to the 9th round. And of course, lo and behold, the Boston Red Sox drafted me because no one else was going to draft me. And that was a very quick conversation. I said, nope, not going to sign with you guys. I will go to Georgia Tech, and had 3 of the best years of my life, and was drafted in the first round after my junior year. And, it all started.
And eventually you got to torment them as a New York Yankee. So what
goes around comes tell you, that was fun. I remember the very first home run I hit at Fenway, I believe it was off of Tim Wakefield. And I just kind of remember in my second year, I was playing for the Texas Rangers, and I'm running around the bases just going, man, that felt good. To hit a home run at Fenway. It definitely felt good to give it back to the Red Sox.
Oh my gosh. Wow. That's sort of like dirty pool on their part, wasn't it?
A little bit, but you know what it does? I feel like everything that happens to you in life, you either make an excuse, you make it a crutch, or you make yourself better from it. And for me, I learned the business of baseball at 18 years old. And I learned to not take it personally. I learned that I have a very small window that I'm going to play this game, and I'm going to do my best and make as much money as possible, and have as much fun as possible, and not let people ruin my baseball experience.
So, Mark, you spent 1 year in the minors, which doesn't happen very often. It's kind of a signal of, okay, there's the force is strong in this one. But what that meant is you got elevated to the majors pretty quickly. And what kind of an adjustment was that, being a rookie in the majors? Did it take a while to settle in? And I know there are huge differences between being in the minors, riding buses and things like that, and being in the majors. Talk us through that phase of your career.
Oh, a huge difference between minor league baseball and major league baseball. A lot of the reasons that you said, better travel, better lodging, you get treated better just across the board. There's a reason that they use the analogy of the minors and the majors in a lot of walks of life, because there's a huge jump from a lifestyle standpoint. But more importantly, the baseball in the major leagues is completely different. In the minors, as a hitter, I would face maybe 1 or 2 pitchers a week, maybe, that were going to make the majors, not become starters or all-stars, just make it to the majors. And you'd face those guys, and sometimes you made outs. You go, man, that guy's pretty good. I'm glad I don't have to face him every day. Well, guess what? In the major leagues, you do face him every day. And you're facing not only guys like him, but guys that have been doing it for 10, 15, 20 years. And they're smarter than you. They have more experience than you. So it took me a while. It took me about 2 months. My first 2 months in the big leagues, I really struggled. And then I started learning, all right, how they're going to pitch me, how I need to prepare. Strike zone's a little bit different. So it did take me a while to get my feet under me in the big leagues.
Just real quick to follow on to that, in the minors, of course, the big dream is to go to the majors. And so you're playing with people, but you're sort of competing with them simultaneously to get that look from the big league to come up. How does that dynamic work?
It's an extremely interesting and stressful and tension-filled locker room, because on the one hand, you're spending a lot of time with these guys, and you want them to do well as teammates. On the other hand, there's only one spot that opens up at a time on the big league roster. And, so say an outfielder goes down. Well, all the outfielders at AA or AAA are looking at each other saying, who's taking his spot? And if you have a bad week, I have a better chance of going up next time around. And it creates an issue on some teams. Now, that being said, everyone understands what they're there for. Minor leagues are a development tool for the big league club. So I bet if you ask general managers and scouting directors and player development directors, they like that competition. They like everyone looking at each other in that locker room, sizing each other up and saying, I'm going to be better than you because, when that call comes, when someone does get hurt, when someone does need to get called up, it's going to be me, not you.
It's probably similar to the wait period we have in the office. When we're in the office, we're trained up and we're all waiting for flight assignments. It sounds like a very similar dynamic.
Well, and I would imagine there's not much you can do to hurt the other guy's chances other than do well yourself. So it's all on your shoulders, right?
Exactly. And I think that's what keeps us sane is that there's not a lot of, there's nothing, it's not like, basketball. I cannot pass to you. In football, I can maybe, run in a different direction and maybe not give you, a chance to block for me. In baseball, you're playing against the other team and you don't need your teammates as much. And so there's going to be less bickering because of that.
You also, if I remember correctly, were not a call-up per se. You made the majors right out of training camp your second year. So it wasn't like you were, in that holding bin. You actually made it out of training camp, right?
I did, but I'd be lying to you if that first year, that 1 year that I was in the minor leagues, at the end of the year,
make it stick.
I'm waiting for that call up. Watching the manager.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm sure I had a cell phone, but it probably wasn't very good. Those days where every other call got dropped because there was no service anywhere. But late in the season, and those managers were walking around, and I'm thinking about who's going to get called up. And I wanted that call up that first year in the minors, but luckily I got it in spring training the next year.
Very cool.
So you had an impressive 14-year major league career, primarily with the Texas Rangers and New York Yankees. From that time, what is some of your most cherished memories? And you probably can't comment which team you like the best or not, but you probably have special memories from all of the teams that you played on.
I absolutely do. And there's two things I tell you. From one from a team perspective, bar none, winning the World Series, the 2009 Yankees. I have a half. You can see behind my left shoulder here. I have a half size World Series trophy. And I look at that thing every day, and it's special. There is no doubt that was the culmination of years of hard work and a long season, and you're with your teammates, and winning a World Series in New York is really cool. Wearing those pinstripes and having those fans behind you is just something I'll always remember. And then personally, there were 3 home runs that I hit that still gives me chills a little bit. That when I hit those home runs, I think, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just did that. And the first was my very first home run. So Texas Rangers, 2003, Ted Lilly's on the mound. We're at home. He's pitching for the Oakland A's. I'm batting right-handed. He hangs a curveball. I hit a home run to left field, and I'm running around the bases saying, oh my goodness, I just hit a home run in the major leagues. And I'm just kind of, playing that back in my mind of this little kid that I was still a kid inside. And here I am hitting a home run in the majors. A couple years later, 2005, my first All-Star game, Dontrell Willis is on the mound, left-handed again. I'm hitting right-handed, hit an opposite field home run in the All-Star game. And I'm running around the bases, almost like watching myself from outside of my body, running around the bases in an All-Star game, the Midsummer Classic. I can't believe I just hit a home run in the All-Star game. And then a few years later, I'm in the World Series, Game 2, Pedro Martinez, pitching for the Phillies, batting left-handed, hit a home run to right center in Yankee Stadium, running around the bases going, wow, I just hit a home run in the World Series. So those were the 3, and there were, hundreds.
Against a good pitcher.
Against a good pitcher. And those were, there's hundreds of really cool experiences, but I'll remember those 3 home runs. Those really stand out.
So how about a few, minor things like winning 5 Gold Glove awards? You were like one of the best defensive first basemen of your era. What did it take for you to achieve that level of excellence in a particular skill position on a field?
A lot of hard work, a lot of concentration. So I tell people first base is a little bit like being a point guard, a little bit like being a center. Like, just don't mess up, don't make turnovers, don't no false starts, no bad snaps. And I felt like I could be somebody at first base that my teammates could count on. And I came up when I was a kid, I was a shortstop. Everyone, when you're a kid, best player on the team, always plays short, right? So I start getting bigger in high school. All the college and pro scouts tell me, you're too big to play shortstop. And I'm not particularly fast. So there's the Cal Ripkens and Corey Seagers of the world that can play shortstop at 6'3", 6'4", and big guys. I couldn't. So they said, you're going to be a third baseman. So I moved to third base my senior year of high school. Stayed at third base all during college. And I wasn't necessarily that good. I was probably an average third baseman. I was serviceable. It wasn't until my rookie year in the big leagues, we already had 2 third basemen on the roster. Hank Blaylock was around my age, and he was a better third baseman than me. So Buck Showalter told me in spring training, hey, you better get some outfield gloves and you better get a first baseman glove because we're going to get you at bats, but you're going to need to play more than one position. And it just stuck. Once I started playing first, it just stuck. And I worked really hard at it. You know, I still kind of can't believe that I won 5 gold gloves as a first baseman because in my mind, I'm still a shortstop. I'm still like that little kid that was the best player on the team playing shortstop. And every now and then in spring training, I would go and take ground balls at short just for fun. And, I loved it.
At first base, tell me which is harder for you. Third base is its own hot corner, but against a left-handed hitter, first base is a hot corner. So a hot, ball like that, or when somebody hits the ball somewhere else in the infield and you have no idea whether that shortstop or third baseman is going to throw one in the dirt in front of your face or over your head or something like that. Which is the more stressful
it's the latter,
moment for you?
When a big lefty hits one hard to me, I know that I had a ton of time. So I can knock that ball down. I can bobble it. Even if I bobble it, I'm going to have time to knock it down and get over to first base and get that out. When guys are throwing balls in the dirt, throwing balls into the runner, that was one thing I had to learn. I had to learn when to jump off the base and make that tag. But the hardest play for me was an in-between kind of ground ball that the second baseman probably could get. And if he can get it, it's a much easier play than me ranging in that second base hole, backhanding a ball, spinning and throwing it to my pitcher on the run. So that was every now and then, it happened, maybe 3-4 times a year, a ball would get through that 3-4 hole. And I go, man, I should have had that one. Like I should have gone and got that one because, getting in front of that second baseman too much and trying to make a really tough play thrown to the pitcher, that's not an easy play.
You commented that you picked up first base in the majors. Is that rather unusual to have somebody start with a brand new position at that level as opposed to, kind of grooming themselves all the way up and just easing into it?
Probably before me, it was very unusual. Now it happens all the time because all of these players are told to be versatile. You can look at a guy like Mookie Betts. So Mookie Betts is an MVP. He was an outfielder. He's now playing some second. He's playing some short. You look at some of the best, DJ LeMahieu, really good utility player. A lot of times these guys show up to the ballpark, there's an injury, but they need that bat in the lineup. So the manager will go, hey, can you play left field? Yeah, I can play. It's baseball. I can go play left field. So unlike, it's like I remember when Magic Johnson, I used to watch the Lakers and Celtics growing up. 80s NBA was the best. And I remember when Magic Johnson had to play center because Kareem got hurt. If y'all remember that. I mean, Magic Johnson understood how to play center because he's a basketball player. And I think for us, it's tough to pitch. It's tough to catch. Other than that, you should be able to play baseball. You should be able to play every position. And I think it's happening way more now where guys are, multi-talented. They get to the big leagues and wherever there's a spot, their bat is going to be in the lineup and you need to learn how to play that position.
Well, it's kind of like Ryan Zimmerman for the Nats. I mean, storied career at third base. They want him in the lineup for his leadership and his bat, but he can't throw the ball from third base anymore. So they make him a first baseman and he played really well there.
Bryce Harper, another good example. Yeah, Bryce Harper is now the first baseman of the Phillies. This is a Hall of Fame caliber talent. And it's like, all right, you're gonna play first now because you got a bad elbow.
Yeah. Could have knocked me over with a feather on that one. So let's talk a little bit about the other side of the game, the hitting piece. We got a few questions for you on that. First of all, you played with and alongside some greats like Derek Jeter, Alex Rodriguez, Albert Pujols. You were all really good hitters. You had to face the toughest pitching on the planet. Who were some of the toughest pitchers you had to go up against that were so hard that were baffling to take on?
If you look at the numbers, guys like Justin Verlander owned me. Justin Verlander, because he could put the ball wherever he wanted. And I hit a home run off him on an inside fastball in Yankee Stadium. And for the rest of my career, I was looking for inside fastballs, and he never gave me another one. So
Of course,
that was
surprise.
fault. But Verlander could read you. Yeah, he could read you and understood what how to get you out, and still in his 40s is still getting people out. James Shields for a different reason, cutter changeup, and for a left, when I was hitting left-handed and right-handed too, if you could throw a cutter in on my hands and then hard, and then throw a soft changeup that faded down and away. And as the ball's coming to you, I'm not sure which one it is until it's halfway there, and in your mind, you got to make that decision. I could never tell between his cutter and his changeup. And those are two majorly different pitches. So he gave me a lot of trouble. But I would rather face those guys than Mariano Rivera and I played with Mo for 5 years with the Yankees. And the reason that Mariano Rivera was so good, I believe I was 1 for 9 with a broken bat single off him in my career before I joined him as a teammate. His cutter breaks the computer in our head, what allows us to hit. We're trained. I can't teach you how to hit. It's just ingrained in you. When he throws that cutter and it's so hard and it cuts so late, it breaks the software, and nobody understands how to hit it. And that's why he was so dominant for so long. So I just never wanted to face that guy.
Yeah.
Well, you talked about, batting left, batting right. So you were a switch hitter throughout your whole career. So that seems like it would be kind of difficult. And did you start out practicing with left and right side hitting as a kid out of curiosity, or was that something you intentionally developed? And how do you be effective from both sides of the plate? What advice do you have?
So the first piece of advice to anybody now is don't be a switch hitter. It is extremely difficult. And the advanced scouting reports and the way that pitchers learn how to throw multiple different pitches, I don't believe switch hitting is as much of an advantage as it was 20 years ago when I started in the big leagues. So that's the first piece of advice I give is pick one side, left or right, and just get really good one way. But back to my original comment about growing up an Eddie Murray fan, in Baltimore, I watched Eddie Murray, and in the backyard playing wiffle ball, I was like, well, Eddie Murray hits left-handed. Let me hit left-handed also. I'm naturally right-handed. And my dad found out really quickly that man, this kid's got a pretty good left-handed swing. So in batting practice, we would try it. And every now and then in a game, if, say I'm 8 years old and we're winning by 6 or 7 runs, I'd go up there and I'd hit left-handed. But it wasn't until, and some coaches were extremely supportive and would say, hey, Mark, yeah, go ahead, go hit left-handed a couple at bats this game. Some, no way, we need you getting hits every time right-handed, and didn't let me hit left-handed. My dad, when I was 13 years old, we were about to start that season. I believe I was in 8th grade, and my dad called the coach of the kind of the select team in our area and said, if you want Mark to play on your team, you got to let him switch hit. And the coach said, okay, no problem. And at 13 years old, I started switch hitting full time because it was, I don't want to say, it was easy. But hitting right-handed against competition in Maryland was easy in 8th grade. So I wanted a challenge, and I wanted to see if I could do it. And, probably by the end of high school, junior, senior year, I was even from both sides. It took probably 3 years to really get comfortable from both sides of the plate. And in my big league career, my stats are very similar. Now I have more power left-handed, and I hit for better average right-handed. But, if you take those advanced stats and OPS and all these other things, runs created, pretty similar both sides of the plate, which I'm proud of.
One of the things I like to ask hitters, Major League Baseball hitters, it has to do with comparing hitting a baseball to landing on an aircraft carrier at night. And I think you and I have talked about this a little bit.
And I read your article. Yes, I read your paper.
I've asked Adam LaRoche's same question. And, you talked a moment ago about we can't teach you to do this. You talked a moment ago about halfway to the plate, I have to decide. Can you talk us through that? It's not parallel processing. It's 3-dimensional, it's vision, it's spatial awareness, and a decision to swing based on a whole lot of other factors. Talk us through that sort of physiological brain experience of hitting a baseball at the major league level.
The only thing I can tell you, Sandy, is that God gave me a gift to hit a baseball, and I'm thankful for that. And if you don't have that pre-wiring, you won't be able to do it. The greatest athletes in the world, I mean, Michael Jordan's, probably the best example. Greatest athlete, maybe of all time, from a physical gift, running, jumping, shooting, competitiveness, focus, all that stuff. Couldn't make it to the big leagues because it is so hard to hit that baseball. So at a certain point in time, I could tell when a ball was released from a pitcher's hand and I had a bat in my hand, I could put the barrel of the bat on the ball. And as I got stronger, those balls started getting hit harder and further. And, again, I can't explain how it's done, but I knew it. At my best, I had a swing for the tee. I put the ball on the tee, and I'd take 100, 200 swings before a game, get my swing right. And then I needed the timing. You have to time up the pitcher, and I had to take that perfect swing where the ball is in a perfect place. If any of those issues were off, if my timing was off by just a hair, if my swing was off by just a hair, if it wasn't a strike, if the ball is not in the middle part of the plate, but on the edges, it was going to be a bad result. So, I can't believe that it's possible to be able to hit a baseball as well as we do, because I can't explain it. I can't teach anyone how to do it, and not many people can.
Well, one of the language centers are on the left side of the brain. That's all I can say there. It's hard to describe. Go ahead, Sandra. I'm sorry.
I was just going to go back to something you said about your stats. The way big data is available now and the way technology is advanced, some of that's kind of creeped into analytics in baseball. How do you think that's affecting the game and how people plan the games or how people tactically arrange things during the games? Surely it's had an effect.
It's a great question. So contemporaries of mine, so guys that I played with or against that are now coaching or in front offices, it is an entirely new world. It's a new language. I can imagine, the first group of scholars or academics that went from, basic, writing and filing to now everything is on a computer, or, computer scientists when they realized that AI was going to be able to do their, half of their job. There's this huge shift. And I think the players that understand how to use it to their advantage, okay, I know what the advanced scouting report means. I know what those numbers mean, and I'm going to make myself better because of that. I think they're at a huge advantage. But there's also another group of players that it's information overload. And, back to your analogy, Sandy, of landing on an aircraft carrier at night, you wouldn't want 15 different people telling you things as you're trying to land, right? You need to be very clear, calm. You need to have your focus. And so I think there are a certain amount of players and coaches where it's information overload, and it's actually hurting them. But I believe at the end of the day, it's a good thing for baseball when used properly, because I think it makes us all better. I think it will make the game of baseball a better product when we all have as much information as possible and we use it to our athletic advantage.
Shifting to sort of a different topic, if I remember correctly, you moved from the Rangers to the Yankees.
Rangers, Braves, Angels, Yankees.
So you did end up in that place called New York, and a completely different environment, different fans, different media. We always, as fans, hear that it's a real pressure cooker for a player. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But talk to us about that shift and what it was like to play in pinstripes when it's got a reputation for being a tough spot for a player.
For good reason. I don't believe that anyone is prepared to to be a Yankee, to play in New York until you actually do it. A lot of guys, I'd be fine, no big deal. When I would struggle in Texas with the Braves, with the Angels, one or two reporters come up to me, "Hey, Mark, how you feeling? What's going on?" And there was actually a little bit of a care. And, that most of the beat writers, generally, most of the beat writers for those smaller market teams generally care about those teams. There's a reason that, they're covering those teams. They're fans and they enjoy the game. And, they want to go to a World Series. You ask any beat writer, they want to go to the World Series and cover their team in the World Series. That's how their careers were made. So-and-so covered, the Texas Rangers for the World Series. That's now a national story that he's writing. So it can go from that to you struggle in New York and there's 50 media members coming up to you, 49 of which could care less about you or your family or your personality or what you're going through, because they have to sell papers.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not selling papers anymore. They need clicks.
And they're competing with each other. Yeah.
It is a different animal. The fans that cheer you one day or boo you the next day. Now listen, when it's good, there is nothing better. There is nothing better than New York fans when you're winning and 1 million people show up on Broadway to do a parade after you win a World Series. That is a rush that I will never forget. But the other side of that coin is tough. And luckily I had more hits than misses, but it's not for everybody.
Yeah, you have to grow thick skin, don't you? Kind of isolate yourself from it.
No doubt.
Mentally. Yeah. Water is the ultimate health drink. With Culligan's filtration systems, you'll get the superior quality and pure tasting, ultra-refreshing hydration you can count on to power your performance.
Culligan's smart reverse osmosis systems take it to the next level, helping you to set hydration goals, track how much you're drinking, and even see what contaminants are reduced in your water.
And that means you're always getting the exceptional water you need to feel truly good inside and out, ready to face the day and whatever challenges it brings. Culligan, water you love. So this is a podcast about risks, so we want to turn the conversation there a little bit because there's a lot of risks. I mean, professional sport, no matter what your sport is, there's always an injury possibility, and that just doesn't affect you personally. It affects your career as well. So did you have a lot of trouble dealing with injuries, and how did you handle them and overcome them?
I had injuries. Luckily, I can look back and I can say, luckily, I broke my ankle very, very badly my junior year of college. So the 5th year, I was coming off being the National Player of the Year. Georgia Tech, we were ranked number 1 in the country. I was ready to break every record at Georgia Tech, NCAA. I felt so great going into that season. The 5th or 6th game of the year, I went out for a pop-up. I was playing third base. The shortstop, left fielder, and I all collided. I broke my ankle. And I had major surgery. I had 2 screws inserted in my ankle. And so before I even started my professional career, I figured out how to get through injury. I figured out how to deal with injury. And it's not if, it's when. If you are a professional athlete long enough, you will get hurt. Maybe Cal Ripken's the only one that can say he didn't. Yeah. But by the way, Cal played through injuries. Cal, he didn't have anything catastrophic. He didn't tear his ACL or break his arm or anything like that. But he played through injuries during the streak. So for me, whenever something would pop up in my big league career, I dealt with it. And I kind of had a rule. If I'm going to hurt the team by playing, I would tell the trainer and tell the manager, hey, listen, this hamstring's killing me. I'm not going to be able to play first base. I'm not going to be able to run. I can barely swing. This is just not a good situation for me. I'm going to hurt the team. If I was injured, but I could still give the team something that my replacement couldn't, like, hey, I think I could probably get you a hit today, or I can actually play first base fine. It's just swinging where this hurts. I was going to go out there and play, and I played through my share of injuries.
So another thing, Mark, that's common knowledge about professional baseball is it's a marathon, not a sprint, right? And it's a 162 game season. You got training camp before that, day games, night games, constant travel. How did you take care of your body and avoid burnout over that time frame? That had to be its own skill set.
There's no doubt. And so a few things. I understand the importance of sleep. So I would sleep as much as possible. I would steal naps whenever I could. I got married at a young age. My wonderful wife, who I met at Georgia Tech, we married in the year before I made the big league. So I was 22 years old when I got married. So I wasn't going out and doing some of the things that a few of the other players were doing and hurting that sleep, right? Um, but then also, I learned the tricks to take care of my body. Ice baths. So now cold plunges, like everyone's got a cold plunge. Oh, you don't have a cold plunge in your house? What's wrong? No. But I started, yeah, I started playing. You just go out into the snow in Colorado.
There you go. Yeah, just dive into a bank.
I did that once, and that was sufficient. Yeah, but go ahead.
A 9 game in Dallas in the middle of summer, and it's 100 degrees, and I would get into the cold tank with buckets full of ice and get my body temperature down, and my legs would come back the next day feeling great. Massage, acupuncture, all of these little things that just, maybe on their own don't help you that much, but you sleep well, you eat well, you do the ice bath, you get massage, you get acupuncture, you see your chiropractor regularly. Those little things allowed me, I might have lasted 9 or 10 years, not 14. And so I figured that out pretty young.
Just a quick side question. I've been in a couple of NFL away locker rooms, and they were unbelievably atrocious. Seriously, a professional sport, the pinnacle of the sport, and the visiting locker rooms are horrible. For you, were the away locker rooms able to support the kind of, like an ice bath or something like that if you needed it?
Most of them were. The difference between our sport and NFL is that in the NFL, you fly in, the night before, play the game, and you're good. So that the week of preparation that you have, that's when you're getting all of your rehab and you're getting all of the rejuvenation techniques during that week. But at a certain point in time, the Major League Baseball Players Association, our union, got together and said, these guys are playing every single day. We have to have decent locker rooms. So all of the new stadiums, anything that was built after 1990, had a really nice visitors locker room that could take care of those things. Now, when I play in Fenway, when I play in Wrigley, those locker rooms are still really small, and those clubhouses are tough. You're not getting a lot of rehabilitation at Fenway and Wrigley.
No, that rule makes sense when you consider you actually go and plant yourself in a city for 3-4 days, and then you go to another city and you're rarely getting a chance to go home to the home turf and rehabilitate.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So have to comment, Georgia Tech retired your number 24 jersey. So how did that feel, and how memorable was that ceremony? That had to be pretty special.
Yeah, number 23. It was always something that I wanted. In the back of my mind, it was always something that I wanted to do, was graduate from Georgia Tech, because at Georgia Tech, and I love this rule, an athlete cannot have their jersey retired unless they graduate. And so I left after my junior year. And I had 40 or 41 hours remaining to get my degree. And I said, maybe someday, I don't know. It's probably going to be, I'm probably going to be in my 50s or 60s when the kids are out of the house. And, I have a year and a half when I'm going to go back to Georgia Tech and do it. My wife would probably think I was crazy, but, we crossed that bridge when we got there. Luckily, in 2020, Georgia Tech opened up online learning as a result of COVID and a lot of students being either stuck in different countries or not wanting to, physically come back. And so they opened online learning. And so a window opened up for me to take a bunch of classes online. And also, so I took my first semester completely online. And then I took the next 2 semesters basically online, but I would go into campus and go into the classroom 1 week a month. And we worked that out with Georgia Tech. They were great. President Angel Cabrera and the dean of the business school and everybody at Georgia Tech was just incredible, allowing me to do that. But when I saw my jersey retired, that number 23, just so many great memories came back. And my wife and I were standing there, and I was 18 years old when I went on to Georgia Tech's campus. To be able to have my number on that outfield wall forever and no one else wearing number 23 is pretty cool.
So you are, I know this for a fact, you're the only athlete from Georgia Tech to have this happen. You may be the only one in NCAA history who had his graduation family reception in a room named for you at Georgia Tech that you actually, sponsored, right? That you donated essentially. So that's a pretty cool. That makes it even better.
And for me, Sandy, what Georgia Tech did for me, for my family, like I said, my wife and I, and our 3 wonderful children, we have 3 teenagers. So time does fly, but everything, my career started at Georgia Tech. My adult baseball career started at Georgia Tech, and being able to give back to Georgia Tech athletics is something that I'm proud to do it. And I'm blessed to have had the career that I had to be able to give back to Georgia Tech. And, if I get to use those facilities every now and then for a party, then that's great. I'm glad that they made it available for me.
I have to ask real quick, when you were back on campus attending class, did the students have any idea who you were and that they had a major league player in the class? And
it was really interesting. So the first day, when I was online, it was really weird because, most people online, like I could probably from a distance and through a screen, I could probably look like I'm still young. So no one really said anything when I was online until later in the semester when we would be talking about some sort of case study or whatever. And I would talk about a life experience and they'd be like, wait a second, dude, how old are you? Like, well, I'm actually 42 years old. Like, oh, okay. But then when I walked into class, those next 2 semesters, I walked into class, I think most, 90% of the students had no idea who I was. Now, their parents might be baseball fans and Braves fans and understand, who I was. But I walked, and I bet most of them thought I was some sort of TA or administrator that was observing the class. Again, until, that first or second time we had some sort of class presentation and I started talking about, my experience or whatever. And like, okay, now I'm starting to get it. But it was really cool. I loved it. It was challenging and rewarding all at the same time. And I'm so glad that I did it.
So you're not just Mark, the former baseball player returning to Georgia Tech. You actually are supporting Georgia Tech athletics beyond baseball in a lot of other ways. And you've got some feelings about how the NCAA is doing business. Talk us through kind of what you're doing now for the school and your thoughts on intercollegiate athletics.
Yeah, so I'm on 2 boards at Georgia Tech. Number one, the Georgia Tech Foundation, which Sandy, you and I, are both members of that board. And so that's really, it's a board that is there to be stewards of the endowment at Georgia Tech. And, I'm on the real estate committee. I'm actually the chair of the real estate committee. So really enjoy, that part of Georgia Tech service and, all of the philanthropic funds that go into Georgia Tech, run through the foundation. So a really exciting place to be. And the other board that I'm on is the Georgia Tech Athletic Association. And what I've started to do, or what I've been doing the last few years on that board, is really help guide Dr. Cabrera, our president, and Jay Batt, our athletic director, on the ever-changing landscape of athletics. I tell people when I was in college, now as a baseball player, I wasn't, football or basketball, but I was, a top-ranked baseball player. I didn't have more than $40 in my pocket at any time, and I was happy as a clam. I wanted for nothing in college. Fast forward 25 years with NIL, there are top baseball players that are making $10, $20, $30, $50,000 a year in NIL money. And I still don't understand why that's good for athletics as a whole. It's good for the kids. But for the kids that are making the money, but for athletics as a whole, I know we're not putting the genie back in the bottle, but it's really difficult to try to raise so much more money in an athletic department where almost every athletic department is hand to mouth. There's probably 10 or 15 out there. Think of the Ohio States and Michigans and Texas and Georgia, Alabama. Those schools are making plenty of money and they're going to be fine. Everybody else, the Georgia Techs of the world, we run at a deficit every year, and we have to go raise that money just to make ends meet. And now we have a great fundraiser base. We have we're in the city of Atlanta. We have a lot of great things going for us. But at a certain point in time, if the NCAA goes to pay for play and the numbers get too crazy, where we're essentially creating professional teams and professional leagues, I don't know how that's good for swimming and diving. I don't know how that's good for rowing. I don't know how that's good for women's lacrosse, because those programs they don't have Heisman Trophy winners. They don't have March Madness that's on CBS. Even the College World Series in Omaha, it's a big deal. So you could see how college baseball players would ask for some more money. But I think there's hundreds and thousands of athletes that are probably going to end up being hurt by these new rules of NIL and paying players.
Your father's alma mater and my father's alma mater, the Naval Academy, they don't get to do NIL and they don't get the transfer portal. Other than people leaving, nobody can come in. So it's even harder for them. So you're absolutely right.
I was a Division II soccer player in college, so it's a completely different experience than what happens in Division I schools. And yeah, it's interesting because it's becoming more big business in the big Division I schools.
And here's my argument: true NIL, where listen, if you're the Heisman Trophy winner and you want to go be on a commercial or sign autographs, you should absolutely get paid. That is true compensation for name, image, and likeness. But an 18-year-old left guard that's going to go sign to play Power 5 football, nobody knows who they are. I don't know who our left guard is at Georgia Tech, right? So the 18-year-old who's redshirting, that not going to play probably for 2 or 3 years, if ever, is not only asking for the full scholarship, but now NIL money on top of it. That's what doesn't make any sense. If you perform and you're you're winning championships on March Madness and you're cutting down the nets. Yeah, you know what? I get it. That kid is marketable. They should, Caitlin Clark from Iowa. Absolutely. She's marketable. 99% of everybody else in college athletics isn't marketable. And so this NIL is it's pay for play, which, most schools are not going to be able to keep up with.
There are sort of two pathways into baseball, going back to your amazing career. You can either go right out of high school, which you could have done, but chose not to for the reasons you've explained, or you can go through college. But they all are just starting out in that professional game. And many young people dream of making it to the majors. What advice would you give to a young kid, 18, 19-year-old kid, maybe even a 15-year-old kid who wakes up in the morning and says, I want to be a professional baseball player?
So first of all, I would tell everyone to go to college, just because the life experiences, the maturing, and to be able to have that backstop if it doesn't work out, because guess what? It's probably not going to work out.
Yeah.
That's the first thing I would tell everyone to go to college. Now, there's a handful of high school kids right now that are making millions of dollars as a first round draft pick. You know what? I get it. I understand. You're ready to start your major league career. Go ahead. Everybody else, I would say go to college. But for me, there's a few things. You've got to love the game, because if you don't love the game, you're not going to practice it enough or play it enough to get good and to build your skills, right? So there are athletes out there that are just so incredibly talented. LeBron James. My guess is if LeBron James picked up a basketball his freshman year of high school, the first time he ever played, my guess is he'd still be LeBron James. As a baseball player at a young age, you need to hit. You need to take ground balls. You need to get on that pitcher's mound and start throwing. You need to develop your skills. So if you don't love the game, if you don't develop a joy for playing and watching, by the way, you're never going to want to be out there enough over the next 3, 5, 10 years of your life to get the reps that you need. I mean, I remember as a kid, growing up in Maryland, we had a basement and we had the old cinder block, foundation in the basement. And I took a lacrosse ball, really bouncy lacrosse ball, and my glove. I would throw the ball against that cinder block wall, and I would just pick balls. And that's how I learned my handwork. And I would do that for hours as a kid. As I got older, I got a tee and a net, and I would hit balls, hit wiffle balls off the tee into the net in my garage. when it was, cold in Maryland and I couldn't go outside and play. So I loved playing. And so I put the time in to develop my skills. And so that's the first thing, is just develop the love for the game. And if you have the talent, everything else kind of flows from there.
Wow. We're kind of closing out on our time. And I have to tell you, this was really super interesting to hear your story and just listen about some of the subtleties and behind the scenes things that we don't really have access to when we watch the game. So thank you very much for being with us.
Well, thank you. And next time I'm going to interview the two of you about flying planes and being an astronaut, because that's way more cool than playing baseball every single day for 14 years of your life.
I don't know. I think everything's an adventure in different ways.
No, it's really cool, Mark, to be able to interview a friend, a fellow Georgia Tech alum, and somebody who actually reached the pinnacle of something. Whatever it was, it happened to be baseball in your case, but really, really achieved greatness. So thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Sandy and Sandra.
That was Mark Teixeira. I'm Sandra Magnus.
And I'm Sandy Winnefeld. Thanks again to Culligan for sponsoring this episode of The Adrenaline Zone. Your high-performance lifestyle deserves high-performance water. Learn more at Culligan.com.
Check us out on social media. Our handle is very simple, @The Adrenaline Zone, and share us with your friends.
We'll see you next week for another episode of The Adrenaline Zone.